The villagers used to laugh whenever they saw him talking to that dog. Okorie, they would shout from across the dusty square. Are you preaching to your congregation again? The old carpenter would only smile, patting the brown mongrel sitting beside his workbench. Better to preach to one loyal heart, he would say, than to a crowd that forgets before sunset. Nobody really hated Okorie. They pitied him the way people pity an old tree, useful for shade, but already half dead. His hut stood at the far edge of Umuaku, close to the stream and the mango grove. He lived alone except for the dog, Toto, who had followed him home from the market one stormy night 5 years earlier. Toto was ugly by any normal standard, ribs showing, one ear torn, tail bent at the tip. Yet there was something in the animal's eyes that made even children pause. It watched everything, as though it understood more than it should. Each dawn Okorie rose before the cocks, boiled Gary into watery pap, and shared half of it with Toto. When the dog licked his fingers, he would murmur his favorite saying. One day, loyalty will feed those who fed it. The words amused the villagers. Loyalty cannot fill a stomach, they said. Only yam can. But Okorie was content to live simply. He repaired broken chairs for widows, carved cradles for newborns, and refused payment whenever he could. When someone insisted on paying, he would smile. Keep your money, he'd say. Maybe tomorrow, you will need a friend more than a chair. Sometimes, late at night, he sat outside watching fireflies and talking to Toto in a low, steady voice. The dog listened, ears twitching, as though the words were meant for him alone. People think poverty is punishment, Okorie said once, rubbing the dog's neck. But some blessings wear dirty clothes so that greed won't recognize them. Toto thumped his tail, as if in agreement. Stories about Okorie's past drifted through the village like dry leaves. Some said he'd once been a city engineer who gambled his fortune away. Others swore he had stolen money from a powerful boss and fled. No one knew the truth, because Okorie never corrected them. When the local preacher asked if he wanted to confess before death, Okorie laughed softly. My sins are between me and God, he said, and God already knows which of us owes the other forgiveness. He worked, ate, and aged quietly. Only the dog seemed to understand that behind the wrinkles lived a man waiting, for what, no one knew. The quiet broke one hot afternoon when a young woman arrived from the city. She wore simple jeans, carried a camera, and introduced herself as Nneka Okafor, a freelance filmmaker collecting stories of forgotten artisans. Papa, she said respectfully, setting down her bag. They told me you build chairs that last longer than marriages. Okorie chuckled. Marriages are built of weaker wood these days. Sit, my daughter, before the sun melts you. She filmed him as he worked, fascinated by his precision and the way he murmured to the timber before cutting. You pray before every stroke, she asked. He nodded. Because wood remembers. If you cut with anger, the piece will twist. Toto watched her constantly. On the third day he began following her whenever she left to record the landscape, escorting her like a small soldier. You have a jealous friend, she teased. Not jealous, Okorie said. Protective. He knows the scent of trouble. Trouble arrived the following week, wearing city perfume and dark sunglasses. An SUV rumbled into the village, raising dust like a storm. 2 men stepped out, both in suits too heavy for the heat. They asked about the old carpenter. We heard he once worked for Chief Duro Ayib, one said, flashing an official-looking card. We're investigating a property matter. When Nneka mentioned the visit later, Okorie's eyes hardened briefly before softening again. Tell them the carpenter they seek died long ago, he said. The one here only mends what others break. That night he couldn't sleep. He sat outside, Toto's head on his knee, whispering. If anything happens to me, you know where to dig. The dog whined softly, licking his palm. Nneka was packing her equipment when the power went out across the village. Outside, thunder rolled. She thought she heard the crunch of tires on gravel, but when she looked through the window, the road was empty. Around midnight, Toto began to growl. The low rumble carried something primal, not fear, but warning. Then came 3 knocks at Okorie's door. "Who is it?" he called. Silence. When he opened the door, no one stood there. Only the smell of petrol and the faint sound of an engine starting somewhere far down the hill. By morning, the village woke to news that the old carpenter had died in his sleep. No sign of struggle, no wound, no poison. Just peace on his face, and his dog curled beside him, refusing to move. They buried Okorie under the mango tree he'd planted as a young man. The children scattered sand, the pastor recited a quick prayer, and the neighbors whispered gossip even during the final amen. "Poor man," said one. "He'll have no rest, even his spirit will be hungry." Another replied, "At least the dog will keep him company." 2 fools together. Only Nneka stayed behind after everyone left. She set down her camera and knelt by the grave. "Rest well, Papa," she said. "You were kinder than this world deserved." Toto lay beside the mound, head bowed. When Nneka tried to pull him away, he bared his teeth, not in rage, but in loyalty too deep for words. From that day, the villagers saw a strange sight, a dog guarding a grave through sun and rain. He wouldn't eat, wouldn't move, except to chase away anyone who came too close. Some said he was possessed. Others believed he was keeping watch until his master returned. On the 3rd night after the burial, a storm rolled over Umuaku. The wind howled like an angry spirit, tearing leaves from trees. Lightning struck the old mango tree, splitting its bark. When the flash faded, Nneka, who had taken shelter nearby, noticed something odd. The ground around the grave had shifted, as though something beneath was pushing upward. She crept closer and saw Toto digging frantically, mud flying beneath his paws. "What are you doing?" she shouted through the rain. The dog ignored her. He dug until his claws bled, until the earth gave way to the dull clang of metal. An iron box appeared, rusted and heavy. Nneka helped pull it free. The lock had long corroded, one twist of Okorie's hammer broke it open. Inside lay bundles of documents wrapped in oilcloth, still dry despite the rain. At the very top was a sealed envelope, its paper yellowed with age, addressed in a shaky hand. "To my true heir." Back in her hut, with the storm still growling outside, Nneka unfolded the letter. "If you are reading this, it means the world has forgotten me, and loyalty alone has remembered. My name is Engr. Okorie Nwosu. Once, I built towers in Eko Meridian. Then greed tore them down. I hid what I had built, land, shares, trust funds, not to save myself, but to save what faith remained in mankind. Whoever finds this after my passing is heir not by blood, but by loyalty. Guard it well, for the greedy will come like locusts." At the bottom was a phrase written twice. "Whoever stays by me when the world turns its face away, owns all I have left." Nneka stared at the words until tears blurred them. She had come to the village to film a story about poverty, something to entertain viewers for 5 minutes. Instead, she had found a life's purpose. When she reached for the box, Toto growled softly. His body blocked her path. "I'm not stealing," she whispered. "I only want to protect it." The dog tilted his head, then gently pushed the letter toward her before lying down again. It was permission, but also warning. She replaced the papers carefully, sealed the box again, and buried it under the mango tree where it belonged. Only then did Toto rest his head on her feet, sighing as if relieved. Days blurred into one another like pages of the same sad song. The villagers went back to their gossip and markets, but Toto remained by the grave, unmoving except for the rise and fall of his ribs. Children threw stones to test his patience, he ignored them. When hunger gnawed, he chewed grass. When thirst burned, he licked rain from the mango leaves. At night, his low whine haunted the village like a flute without music. Even the pastor stopped passing that way. That dog guards more than bones, he told his wife. He guards truth. Only Nneka still visited. She brought food, water, and gentle words. Toto, eat, please. Your master would want that. Sometimes he took a few bites, mostly to please her. Then he returned to the mound, watching the horizon as if waiting for his master's footsteps. A week after the storm, strangers returned, 3 men in expensive shirts and polished shoes, their car bearing Eko Meridian plates. They asked the same questions. Where is the carpenter's body? Who was with him before he died? Did he leave anything behind? The villagers, ever eager for excitement, led them straight to Nneka. Madam journalist, they say you were closest to him, one elder said. The men introduced themselves as representatives of Chief Duro Ayib and partners. Their leader, a tall man with cold eyes, handed her a business card. We're finalizing certain estate matters, he said smoothly. We'd appreciate your cooperation. Nneka felt Toto's presence before she saw him. He trotted from behind the tree, growling low. The men backed away. Control your animal, one snapped. He's not mine, Nneka replied. He belongs to the truth you're afraid of. They left soon after, muttering threats. Toto followed their car until it vanished beyond the hills. That night Nneka couldn't sleep. The letter burned in her mind. Whoever stays by me when the world turns its face away. She searched Okorie's hut carefully for anything else he might have hidden. Behind a loose plank, she found a small wooden box wrapped in cloth. Inside lay old photographs. A younger Okorie in suit and tie beside a smiling woman, 2 children, and a tall man she recognized from business newspapers, Chief Duro Ayib himself. There were also blueprints stamped with Meridian Construction Limited, signed Engr. Okorie Nwosu, lead architect. So it was true. The poor carpenter had once designed half of Eko Meridian's skyline. Her throat tightened. You carried a kingdom in silence, she whispered. On the back of one photo were 4 words, written faintly in pencil, trust the loyal heart. Word of the discovery spread faster than Harmattan fire. By the time Nneka reached town to buy supplies, newspapers were already shouting headlines. Unknown carpenter linked to lost billionaire fortune. Mystery dog guards hidden wealth. Reporters flooded Umuaku. Drones hovered above the mango tree. Photographers offered money for a single shot of Toto. The villagers who had mocked Okorie now spoke his name with pride. Ah, he fooled us all. That old man was richer than chiefs. Nneka hated it. Their excitement felt like vultures circling a fresh corpse. She spent her days protecting the grave from intruders, and her nights drafting statements for the press that never told the whole truth. One evening, she found Toto bleeding, a small wound on his shoulder, probably from a thrown stone or greedy hand. She cleaned it gently. Why do they hurt what they can't understand? The dog rested his head on her lap. His breathing was slow but steady. In that moment, she realized she was no longer just a filmmaker chasing a story. She had become guardian of a legacy, and its living witness was dying at her feet. Desperate to protect what remained, Nneka wrote to the Eko Meridian Registrar of Companies, attaching copies of Okorie's documents. 2 weeks later a lawyer arrived, grey-haired and cautious. He introduced himself as Barrister Ifeanyi Chukwura, long retired, but once legal counsel to Meridian Construction. He examined the papers carefully. These are authentic, he said. I recognize his signature. He transferred all his holdings to a private trust, one that activates only under certain conditions. What conditions? She asked. Proof of loyalty, he said simply. The trust's heir must demonstrate it. How does one prove loyalty to the dead? The old lawyer smiled sadly. Perhaps by serving the living as he did. He promised to investigate further and left. That night, for the first time in weeks, Nneka slept, not peacefully, but with purpose. Just before dawn she dreamed of Okorie standing under the mango tree, looking younger, dressed in the same clean shirt from his photographs. Toto has kept his promise, he said. And you, my daughter, will you keep yours? What promise? She asked. To protect loyalty from greed. He reached out, placed something in her hand, a silver key, and whispered, the box is not the treasure. The heart that guards it is. She woke with the key-shaped imprint pressed into her palm, though she'd been holding nothing. Driven by that dream, Nneka returned to the grave at sunrise. Toto watched quietly as she knelt beside the mound. I think he left us another secret, she said. Help me find it. As if understanding, Toto began to dig again, slower this time. After a few minutes his claws struck something wooden. A smaller box appeared, one she hadn't seen before. Inside was a folded blueprint labeled Loyalty Estate Project and a handwritten note. For the future that believes in kindness. If greed built towers, let mercy build homes. Nneka pressed the paper to her chest. She understood now, he wanted his fortune to build something human, not golden. By the following week the men in suits returned, this time with police escort. They produced warrants, accused her of theft, and demanded access to the property. Those documents belong to Meridian shareholders, one officer said. Nneka refused. They belong to the man who earned them, and to the loyalty that kept them safe. When they tried to push past her, Toto lunged. Chaos erupted, shouts, dust, barking, men stumbling backward. In the confusion, the officer's cap flew off, and one of the men pulled a gun. The shot never came. The weapon jammed, the hammer clicking uselessly. A strange wind swept through the clearing, rattling the mango leaves though the air had been still a moment before. Everyone froze. Even the dog stopped growling. The lead officer crossed himself. Let's go, he muttered. This place is cursed. They left without another word. The shot never came. The weapon jammed, the hammer clicking uselessly. A strange wind swept through the clearing, rattling the mango leaves though the air had been still a moment before. Everyone froze. Even the dog stopped growling. The lead officer crossed himself. Let's go, he muttered. This place is cursed. They left without another word. That evening Barrister Chikora returned with documents stamped from Eko Meridian's High Court. The trust is active, he said. Your name appears as custodian, Miss Nneka Okafor, by virtue of discovery, witness, and moral stewardship. He anticipated everything. She blinked in disbelief. He didn't even know me. The old man smiled. He knew there would be someone. He trusted loyalty more than blood. He handed her an envelope bearing Okorie's familiar handwriting. Inside was one line. When they dig for gold, dig for goodness. Nneka cried quietly, the kind of tears that cleanse rather than wound. A month later, when officials came to exhume the grave for verification, they found it empty. No coffin, no bones, only Toto's collar lying atop the fresh earth, faintly glowing in the dusk. The pastor said it was a miracle. The villagers said it was witchcraft. Nneka said nothing at all. She buried the collar again and whispered, "Rest, my friend. You've done enough." That night, lightning flickered across the horizon, illuminating the mango tree, whole again, its trunk sealed as if it had never been split. Nneka stood at her window watching until the storm passed. She felt no fear, only peace, and the faint sense that somewhere nearby, an old man was finally smiling. Eko Meridian looked different from the way Nneka remembered it. The city that once dazzled her with its glass towers now felt like a restless animal, beautiful but hungry. Billboards shouted promises of wealth. Traffic hummed like machinery counting coins. As her taxi rolled past the skyline Okorie had helped build, she imagined him walking these same streets years ago, carrying blueprints that nobody believed in. The following morning she met Barrister Chikora at the registrar's office. The clerk stared as they signed papers transferring Okorie Nwosu's dormant holdings to the House of Loyalty Trust. When the final seal fell with a thud, the old lawyer said softly, "Now the city must remember who really built it." Nneka rented a modest building downtown, once a warehouse, now smelling of dust and hope. She cleaned it herself, painted the walls white, and hung a wooden sign carved with Okorie's proverb. "One day, loyalty will feed those who fed it." Within months, the House of Loyalty Foundation opened its doors. Street children came first, then widows, then men broken by debts they didn't deserve. Nneka refused to separate them. "Hunger," she said, "does not know class." Every war carried reminders of the carpenter, who had lived with nothing but gave everything, his hammer mounted above the entrance, his worn chair displayed in the lobby, Toto's collar framed beside a quote. "Guard what loves you back." Success brought attention. Journalists wanted interviews, television hosts invited her to glossy studios. She attended only one. Miss Okafor, the presenter asked, "How did you rise from obscurity to manage a billion-naira trust?" Nneka smiled faintly. "By kneeling beside a grave and learning that loyalty doesn't die." The clip spread across social media. People called her the woman who inherited a ghost's fortune. But she disliked the little. "I didn't inherit," she told her staff. "I was chosen to continue." Sometimes, late at night, she replayed the video and saw not herself, but the reflection of the mango tree, its branches swaying somewhere beyond memory. Wealth changes people, but it didn't change her hunger for purpose. She spent her days visiting building sites funded by the trust, homes for widows, schools for orphans, workshops for artisans. Everywhere she went, she carried Okorie's hammer as a reminder that hands build futures, not money. At the opening of a new vocational center, a young apprentice asked her, "Auntie Nneka, do you believe dogs have souls?" She smiled. "If loyalty is soul, then yes, some dogs have more of it than many men." Rain returned one night, heavy and insistent. Nneka sat at her desk reading grant proposals when she heard it. A soft, deliberate scratching at the door. Her heart quickened. She knew that sound before reason could explain it. She opened the door. There stood Toto. Older now, ribs sharp, fur gray at the muzzle, but unmistakable. Around his neck hung a small leather pouch. "Toto," she whispered. "You found me." The dog limped inside, tail wagging once before he collapsed at her feet. Hands shaking, she unfastened the pouch. Inside lay a single folded document, an official will bearing the seal of Meridian Holdings Limited, signed Engr. Okorie Nwosu. The text named her as sole executor and custodian of all assets, to be used for the service of loyalty and mercy. Tears filled her eyes. She looked down, but Toto was gone, no paw prints, no sound, only the faint scent of rain and wood shavings. When the will was verified, even the courts couldn't explain how it had resurfaced. Chief Duros contested it, but evidence silenced them, fingerprints, dates, the original key to the trust, all authentic. Newspapers called it the carpenter's miracle. With the inheritance secure, Nneka expanded the foundation. She commissioned a statue outside its headquarters, a man kneeling beside a dog, both carved from white marble. At the base she engraved, "True wealth is not gold, but the heart that stays." Every visitor stopped to touch the statue for luck. Some swore it felt warm to the hand. To mark the second anniversary of the foundation, the city hosted a celebration. Banners rippled through the streets, musicians played under bright lights, and children released paper lanterns carrying handwritten wishes. When Nneka stepped onto the stage, the crowd roared. She wore a simple white dress and around her neck, Toto's collar, polished into a pendant. "My father used to say," she began, "that loyalty is the only inheritance that cannot be stolen. Today, I share it with you." The applause rolled like thunder across the square. Above them, one lantern drifted higher than the rest, glowing gold before vanishing into the clouds. Months later, two men visited her office, faces she recognized from the day of the confrontation in Umuaku. They came without arrogance this time. "Madam," one said, eyes lowered, "we were wrong. We followed greed. It led us nowhere." She studied them for a moment, then gestured to the chairs. "Sit. If you want redemption, start by building houses, not excuses." They joined the workforce the next day. People whispered about the billionaire's mercy. Nneka thought only of Okorie's final instruction: use what you find to feed faith, not greed. That night she dreamed again. The mango tree stood whole and green, beneath it Okorie waited, Toto beside him. "Are you satisfied?" she asked. He smiled. "You kept the promise. The world remembers now." Toto barked once, joyous and free. As dawn broke, she woke with the taste of mango in the air and peace in her chest. Years later the foundation's reach spread beyond Nigeria. Scholarships bore Okorie's name, rescue shelters for animals carried Toto's. Visitors from abroad came to see the statue of man and dog that seemed, under certain sunsets, to shimmer as if alive. When asked by a reporter what lesson her life had taught her, Nneka answered quietly, "That loyalty is the bridge between the poor man's hut and the billionaire's tower. Cross it with kindness, and you'll never fall." She returned home that evening to the gentle sound of claws tapping marble. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Some guardians, she had learned, keep watch where eyes cannot see. Outside, thunder rumbled once, soft, approving. The city lights flickered like candles at prayer. And somewhere in the wind, a voice whispered the line that had started it all. "One day, loyalty will feed those who fed it."